Hi, my name is Paulina Haduong, and today I'm going to talk about getting unstuck together, PK-12 computing teacher interactions in an online professional learning experience. So I'm sharing some of the work that we've been doing at the Creative Computing Lab with Karen Brennan at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. So computer programming, particularly when students are engaged in self-directed and open-ended work, often involves a lot of debugging, as we've seen in prior presentations. In order to learn how to debug, we see this as creating opportunities for students to get stuck and then practice getting unstuck. And in PK-12 context, we also see teachers getting stuck when trying to support students in doing this open-ended work. There's a need to also support teachers in developing their own content knowledge. And we've been especially interested in this in the context of Scratch and communities of learners, whether that's in the classroom or professional learning communities for teachers. So getting stuck and getting unstuck can happen individually, but it could also happen together. So in this design-based research project, we've been creating curriculum materials for grades 4 through 6, as well as supporting teachers in participating in an online professional learning experience. And we're currently piloting the curriculum materials in classrooms before we offer a public release of the curriculum. And today I'm going to focus just on this small sliver of the summer online professional learning experience, which supported teachers in developing their own fluency with Scratch. So for 2 weeks, participating teachers received a daily email with an invitation to explore an idea, create a Scratch project in response to a specific prompt, share their work, and then reflect on what they made. Teachers shared projects to daily Scratch studios, and they were also communicating in the studios, as well as through a Facebook group and on Twitter. Over 1,000 people signed up to receive the emails. Around 300 people participated by making at least one project, and collectively over 2,000 Scratch projects were made. And you can see here that while there was indeed some drop off from the beginning of the experience, engagement remained relatively high to the end of the 2 weeks. In the Getting Unstuck Scratch studios, participants generated over 10,000 comments on projects. These were comments on others' projects on their own. These were comments of appreciation or noticing bugs in others' work, or even suggestions for what else they might do. And in this professional learning experience, participants had a wide range of prior experience with Scratch. So excluding the 5 facilitators, which included 2 university researchers and 3 elementary school teachers, we grouped participants by their self-reported prior Scratch familiarity. So if participants reported that they had never used Scratch or had only made a couple projects, they were tagged as lower familiarity. If participants had helped others or felt well acquainted with Scratch, they were tagged as higher familiarity. And this past summer, we had 69 lower familiarity participants, or about a quarter, and then 224 higher familiarity participants, or about 75%. And drawing on situated learning perspectives and thinking about learning as participation, we've been taking a closer look at participant interactions. We've been particularly inspired by Yasmin and Debbie's work on looking at comments in the Scratch community, and through this work, looking at the following research questions. So how do teachers with varying prior Scratch familiarity interact with one another? And one way of exploring this question has been to map participant interactions within the community, looking within individual daily studios, as well as across the 2-week experience. So in this snapshot of studios 8 through 10, you can see where different groups of participants were directing their comments. So lower familiarity teachers began with a moderate tendency to interact with higher familiarity teachers and facilitators without necessarily interacting with each other. That is, participants who were more used to interacting in the Scratch community were looking at others' projects and writing comments on them, and lower familiarity participants were responding to those comments on their own projects. Over time, however, we saw lower familiarity teachers strengthen interactions with those who had similar levels of prior Scratch familiarity. That is, instead of only looking at their own projects and responding to comments on their own projects, they were also looking at others' work and writing comments. And as another way of looking at how participants were interacting, we've also been creating a series of case studies to understand individual participants' trajectories over the 2 weeks. So for example, these are 4 projects that Stacy, a lower familiarity participant, made. Stacy is a 4th grade teacher who was introduced to Scratch only 2 months before getting unstuck through a graduate course. And before participating in this experience, she had only made 3 Scratch projects, all of which were remixes of tutorial projects. Like other lower familiarity participants, when facilitators commented on their projects, Stacy would respond by saying thank you. And for Stacy's first few projects, this was her primary form of interaction with other participants. When they came to her project pages, left a comment, she would often follow up with a response. Towards the end of getting unstuck, however, we saw Stacy look at others' projects, writing not only appreciations for their projects, but also making connections to her own work, as well as supporting others and participating in more complex conversations. So on Molly's project, Brian, a facilitator, noted that he had found a bug. And before Molly had a chance to respond, Stacy actually wrote back saying, "I think I fixed it with this remix." And Molly responded to both of them with gratitude. And these were just some of the ways that participants interacted with each other in the summer experience. And currently we're working on the classroom pilot of the materials, and we're excited to release the curriculum publicly next year. And finally, I just want to recognize some of the many people who've contributed to the Getting Unstuck project. And thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, let's open it up for questions.
I wonder if you could go back to that diagram where you were showing how the different types of participants changed their participation over time. It went by really fast, and maybe you could use your mouse to sort of, yeah, I was really entranced with it, but I want to know, yeah, that one. You were talking about the low familiarity participants changing their type of participation. Can you help me interpret where that's being mapped?
So it's not visible on this one because this is like it's a static snapshot. And I think if I had more time, I would have perhaps made a GIF so you could see the changing arrows over time. But basically what we're looking at is where the arrows sort of like come out of the group and then point back in. And in the earlier studios, you don't see this arrow, and instead the lower familiar participants are just sort of going out into the facilitators and the higher familiarity folks.
Thank you.
All right. I think if it's okay, we're going to keep, oh, let's see, I wonder if and how teachers' prior teaching experiences, trajectories influence their participation. I think you answered part of that in your last question, in the last answer. If you all don't mind, just because I'm wanting to be respectful of time, can we move on to Nicole?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Nicole.